Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We've got the really difficult job, not just because it's the last one before everybody goes off, so everybody's desperate to go, but also because we've been going through the presentation thinking, okay, what have we got to say that's not already been said? Now, fortunately, it's quite a lot because we've got a slightly different angle on this because we're looking specifically at a product, but it's addressing a lot of the things that people have spoken about already, which is quite nice because it's almost like bringing everything together. So hopefully it's not too repetitive. It'll be using some of the ideas that people have talked about already. To talk about Office 365 in your classroom. And starting off with, you probably can't read that actually, I didn't realise how small they're going to be on the screen. But it's probably a situation which already people recognise. A little kid, Grandpa, when you were a kid, did you have iPads in your classroom? No, Millie, we didn't have fancy technology back then. When I was your age, we did everything the old-fashioned way. She says, you mean with computers? Which is kind of like, it's an inevitable state now. My daughter's 6 years old and is amazed that my parents don't have TV that will pause, you know. But there's all sorts of things like that. There's just an expectation. The expectation of what was and what is changing so much over a rapidly short space of time. And this product that we're going to look at, Office 365, has really contributed to the changes and the evolution of a product that we've actually been working with for quite a while. Now, the title of this is Getting the Most Out of Office 365 in Your Classroom, which, if Jim hadn't have done the presentation that he did earlier, would have been quite nice. Fortunately, we've got a slightly different spin on it because we're going to talk about making the use of Office 365 outside the classroom to get effective use of it in the classroom. There's a couple of reasons behind this that we're going to talk about based on the idea that the situation outside of the classroom has changed very much. So I'll hand over to, no one, I'll talk about this first of all. Aldi mentioned this at the beginning. A couple of people have referred to it throughout. This idea of the flipped classroom, the flipped learning, when the learning actually takes place. Now, this is quite a broad statement that's on here, so it's not absolutely accurate, but I've got a bit of an issue with this, which I'm going to describe. So the idea of the flipped classroom, that learning is done through work outside of the classroom, and understanding is gained through discussion and collaboration within the classroom. And I want to question that because I want to say, well, does that necessarily need to be the case? Does the flipped learning need to be those two absolute edges that need to be kept absolutely separate? And I think with Office 365, you'll be able to see how those two elements of flipped learning can actually happen inside or outside of the classroom. We're also going to look at the idea of a learning platform because these things have been around for a while. We've been working with them for quite a while. We've been using various different bits of technology to put together the learning platform, what people saw as the content side of the flipped learning model. But what happens with that is they become like a ghostly classroom. They're almost like they're populated, but there's no activity going on. So it's not like a real classroom. And that's why learning platforms don't really tend to get too embedded. There's a lot of enthusiasm at first. You can go in and you can get the resources, but it's not particularly engaging because there's not really that activity going on. So that's kind of the situation that we're at the moment from the learning side of view.
Yeah, so one of the most important things that we need to look at when looking at using these technologies is the trends and how they've changed. So in order to get the most out of a learning platform, we're no longer designing for desktop computers. As you can see from this, people are using their mobile phones on their way into school, into work in the morning, just to brighten up their commute. Then when you get into the office, when you get into the school, you're still using desktop computers because that's the way it's always been done. But again, then when you get home at night, which most people will probably be able to relate to, you're using your tablet device. People don't go home and sit at a desk anymore. You're sitting, you're watching TV at the same time, you're doing other things. You want that portable device. And so when looking at getting the most out of these platforms, you need to think, don't design it for what we have now, but design it for the future. And the other thing is the way in which we look at information. We're no longer sitting focused on one particular device. We're sitting, we're watching TV, we're doing other things. 86% of mobile users are using it while watching TV at the same time. And again, that's very powerful when relating it to students, that they're sitting at home, they're watching their favorite programs, but they could also be looking at something online and researching into that. It's no longer a focused task. So obviously during this presentation, we're looking at Office 365. And so I've been given 30 seconds by Paul to show you exactly what 365 is, just in case any people don't know it. So it's a suite of 5 products. So you've got Exchange, which is your email. So you get 50 gigabyte mailboxes. Everybody knows email. It's slightly smarter. There are some apps built in which will show you a map if you put an address. It will add it to a meeting if there's an invite in there. You've then got SharePoint, which is a learning platform side of it. So again, you've got the same ribbon that people are used to across Microsoft Office. This is where you put your resources, your YouTube videos, and all of your content together. You've then got your OneDrive, which is SkyDrive in essence until they were sued. So it's now OneDrive. But that's your own personal storage, so you can put your own files in there. You have Link, which is a communication tool, which you can then use not only within your school, but to branch out further. So Ollie was talking earlier about using Skype. Link is in essence the same as Skype, and you can use it in the same way with schools all around the world. And I actually ran a project with a comic artist in Australia. There was no way that I could get someone into my school from the other side of the world, but by using this technology, they were able to teach your students. And then finally, you've got the web apps, which are Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and OneNote, all available on any device connected to the internet. So the other important question is, why did we choose Office 365 as our platform of choice? Because obviously there's quite a range out there of other things that you could use. But the reason that we like this one is that it's industry standard technology. It just removes that learning curve for you. It's the same Microsoft ribbon that people are used to, so they can get on and just start using this and putting their content on there. It's also flexible, because we didn't want a product that is designed just for today, and that in a year's time you're going to think, well, now I've hit a barrier. Suddenly, I've designed something and almost into using iPhones, it no longer works. It needs to have that flexibility built in, which Office 365 does. Also device neutral. Not a last minute edit. So it works across a range of devices, which again is important. The world in which we're living in, we don't know what devices we're going to be using in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. Whatever you have has to have that flexibility that it's going to continue working. And then probably 3 of the main things are that it needs to be reliable. Your staff need to know that the portal that they're using is dependable, that it's there for them. And because it's hosted by Microsoft, they guarantee 99.9% uptime. It needs to be secure, so that your data isn't out there. I mean, this is especially important when it comes to the social features. You have your newsfeed built in, but it's there in a secure environment. And it also needs to be connected. That all the products that I've mentioned earlier, the 5 main sections, are all under one login. So you don't need to keep going off and remembering all the different accounts. It's all there in one section for you. But what I want to look at now is actually how you use that and the way in which it can enhance learning.
Okay, so as Brendan mentioned, the first thing about Office 365 particularly important, industry standard, the familiarity of it really facilitates participation from a teacher point of view. So a teacher can actually get involved with this a little bit more than just uploading documents, using it as an empty classroom, just depositing documents on there. You can get much, much more rich media content that you develop without being a designer. Now, you couldn't do that even 2 or 3 years ago. It would take a much higher skill set, a much more advanced skill set. You don't need to do that now. This is almost like you can look at this, recognize immediately the tools, and start to say, well, I can actually use PowerPoint already. I can use Word already. So I can use this. I can develop something that's a little bit more engaging, on-screen information that's not requiring downloading, uploading, just being a Word document, just being a PowerPoint. Just stretching things a little bit further becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I think that's very important to not think about this as, I'm just going to put my documents online and access them, but think about the whole range of rich media that's available out there and bringing it all together. And again, as mentioned, from the student perspective, designed for any device. So don't think they're going to be sitting at their computer and this is how they're going to use it. Think about them, they're sitting at home, they're watching TV. What is it that the students want to have access to? And as I say, we currently talk about using your iPhones, using your iPads, but that extends so much further. So you've got things like games consoles where students have these at home already, but again, they're going to start using them more and more. You've got the Xbox One, which has got a whole load of features built into it. This is a way in which students work at home anyway. They're always on their consoles. Make the most of it with your platform as well. So there's a quick example of actually creating a PowerPoint using an Xbox 360.
And that's particularly powerful from the point of view of if you are expecting work to be happening at home, you can't necessarily expect every child to be able to go home and have access to a desktop computer or a laptop, but there is a much, much more likelihood that they've got another device that will access the internet in some way, and that's going to increase over time, but we don't know what those devices are going to be. So the fact that somebody knows how to use an Xbox may already be on their Xbox, and they can do this, is a real benefit. And we do know this works because we had to justify to our boss why we were on an Xbox and doing these things. But it changes this idea of a device being a games console. Things are becoming much more, can I use my word of the moment? Things are becoming much, much more homogenous in that they all do lots and lots of different things. And an Xbox as a device for doing homework is quite an important thing, really. Again, a couple of people have talked about this idea of the salmon model, things starting off where you're doing the same sort of task. And Office 365 obviously lends itself for you to be able to do a lot of the tasks that you would have been able to do, but nothing any more particularly advanced. But there are things that are in there that do allow you to take that next step along. So, working on a Word document, you can actually do that on any device. Great, we've solved a problem there that they might not have a laptop or a desktop. But now with this web online version of Word, you can actually work collaboratively. You can work with several people on the same document at the same time. Okay? That's something that you couldn't do previously. What we're going to look at now, some of the things that we mentioned in this idea of the flipped classroom and where this should actually happen. So this idea that the learning, the understanding actually happens through the discussion. Now, discussion forums have been around for quite a while inside learning platforms. Not particularly anything new. This still exists now inside Office 365, but there is a massive boost inside Office 365, and it's the thing that's on screen at the moment. And it's actually this thing called a reputation. And it's great being able to go to training sessions and say, you can earn yourself a reputation. But in the Office 365 sense, it's actually a really positive thing. Because what this is doing is rewarding the participation. So Ollie mentioned in the very first session, this idea of effort. The amount of effort that you put into something, that will be rewarded through Office 365 systematically. The more you participate, the more points that you can achieve. As a teacher, you don't need to do anything in that. You can quite happily sit back and let that actually occur. That point will go up as somebody participates. Okay?
And we found actually when working with students on this that you'll see that you need to earn 50 points to move to the next level. The students didn't actually care what that next level was, they just wanted to get there. Yeah, so they were participating in a lot of discussions to get the points up. Yeah, so it's this idea of reward being something that doesn't necessarily have to be financially based, something that's just on screen, and that is the default level. Earn more points to move to the next level. When we're doing this, there's a lot there's no questioning. It's just like, I want to get to that next level. No, what do I get for this particular next level? So that's really powerful in itself. It's really good with engaging the students in using the platform as well, because it gives them a reason to keep going on there, keep going to these sites, and it makes it about them adding the content and working together, rather than it having to be your teachers leading it.
There's also the feature as well that you might just say, well, somebody might just go for I'm just going to put lots and lots and lots of stuff on here just to build up my points. I've worked out how this works. I'm going to play the system a little bit. There's also tools inside there for the teacher to actually say, this is really good. I'm going to reward you with particular things. And this is the sort of thing that you would have, which you definitely won't be able to see on the screen on there. But what I've done is I've asked a question on here, start off my discussion forum. What does autobiography mean? How does it differ to the word biography? Lots of people have answered on there. They've all built up their reputation by participating with this. They've all had the opportunity to see what other people are doing. They've also had the opportunity to use the Orwellian and Facebookian like to be able to say, yeah, I like that. So it's actually participating again. A good reward system, being liked by your peers for your participation, really, really good in terms of encouraging good participation because their peers are going to see this. They might like it. They might just like it anyway just because it's the mates. But, you know, it's building up the idea of actively engaging online. But me as a teacher, what I want to do is I want to go through all these answers and I want to say this is the best reply. Okay? So what I've actually done there is I've actually gone through 3 steps of part of the flipped learning model, but those things could actually now happen either in the classroom or outside of the classroom. It's completely independent. So students engaged in the discussion might happen offline. They might have hours to work on this. They can respond to this at different times. So somebody posts something, 20 minutes later somebody else responds to that, 3 hours later somebody else responds to it. It's not constrained by time anymore in the way that a lesson would be, just because of the way in which a school has to operate. Teacher awards the best reply. Now that can then become the discussion focus for why this is the best reply. Okay? That could happen again. We could start the cycle again, where the whole thing happens online. Could happen in the classroom. So that flipped learning model of this happens here, maybe a little bit rigid. Not been around for too long, but it's maybe time that we can start to question it. Is that allowed? Ollie, are we allowed to question it? Good. So, in terms of this sort of recognition, this peer recognition of achievement, you can see on there that we've got top contributors, and we've got a Brontosaurus, and a talking token, and an expert on there. And everybody can see that. Everybody can see how everybody's actually involved with this. All tools that are inside Office 365. The other good thing about this is that if we're saying that this can happen at absolutely any time, we can be informed about it. I don't have to keep going and seeing whether the classroom is empty, whether there is activity going on. I can get this learning and this activity pushed out to me. And this is, again, a little bit of an expectation now that information on demand, yeah, well, we've had information on demand. I've wanted to be able to log on to something and access anything whenever I want to. That's been around for a while, but now that's changed very much from just being able to access the information on demand to being told about it on production. So as soon as it happens, and this is something that already, there'll be a lot of people here who are familiar with this idea of having an app on the phone that as soon as I bid on something on eBay, I don't even know what that is on there, a lens for a camera. If I get outbid on that, I get told about it straight away. And how does Office 365 use that technology? Well, it's got the same idea. It's got an app that if I install that on my phone, it puts a little asterisk to tell me that something new has happened to something that I've subscribed to. So I'm getting that information through. Now that's really important because what you're actually doing there is you're saying that the learning can intrude on your life outside of learning. So you might be out and about, you might be down at the gym or doing whatever it is that you're doing as a 14, 15-year-old. Your learning is coming through to you all the time, and it's interrupting you. It's letting you know about that. And this is the sorts of things that you might get informed about. So again, I was going to do a live one, but I thought that won't work, so I'll put a screenshot on there. So I've actually got on there the conference, and it looks very familiar. It looks very Facebooky. It looks very Twittery because it uses hashtags and things like that. It's the sort of technology that there'll be a lot of people, you don't even need to teach them how to use it. They'll just be like, I'll put the app on, I'll get this through. It just kind of works. It's just a kind of an expectation. All part of Office 365 that's kind of like these little hidden gems.
Yeah, kind of questions are thinking about, do you now actively have to go and get information, or does that information come to you wherever you are? So if a student's sitting at home, should they be informed that there are new resources rather than having to wait for the teacher to tell them or for them to have to go and find them?
And the idea that Office 365 can actually be used for your organisation as well, in terms of not an organisation as a company, your organisation as in your personal organisation. Because as a student, particularly at GCSE time, exam time, there's a lot of things that you've got to do organisation-wise that are not necessarily based around your subject knowledge or your exam knowledge. Just things like, what have I got to do? What have I got to remember? When have I got to be somewhere? Okay? That's the sorts of things that a few years ago we would have done on a to-do list, on a piece of paper, or on a calendar that's stuck up on a wall somewhere. The idea of somebody operating just like that now is starting to get archaic. I actually use this sort of technology now to manage my life. This is kind of like my equivalent of somebody who nags me to do things. Anything that's written on my calendar at home, my paper calendar, I forget completely. With this, I'm using the technology to actually organise me. Again, all of these things are inside Office 365. Technology can become the wings that will the education world to fly farther and faster than ever before if we allow it. And I think that that's really important. I think that's a really nice statement to sort of like sum up all the things that we've been looking at. Because ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move the educational world forward because again, I thought it was a great example about Woolworths sitting still, things staying the same. And Mandeep was saying as well, somebody saying, this is how I've done things, this is how I've always done things, it's been successful, that's fine, but things are going to change around you. If you stay still and everything else is moving, you're going to end up getting left behind. And I really do think that that's a nice statement to end with. So just to finish off, because I don't think anybody else has done it, we've got a few links on there for various bits of information. Our site, civica.co.uk/education, has got lots of information about the things that are on these boards around here. Our Twitter feed as well is not a sales thing. It's lots and lots of information about how technology can be used. You see that the word learning is in there. That's massively important. And again, the blog that we've got, Civica Learning blog, if you'd like to subscribe to that as well. Lots of information coming through about using technology and learning.